The default settings of the host PC and of Data Viewer have been configured so as to maximize data quality and to optimize the detection of fixations and saccades. Nonetheless, occasionally studies require the use of data filtering and/or data editing. For example, a particular research paradigm might require the use of suboptimal data acquisition conditions, or the data analysis process might strive to replicate previous studies that used particular filtering methods. In these cases, the techniques described in this video can come in handy. Before doing any filtering, it's highly recommended to save a backup copy of your viewing session. Though the filtering and editing techniques described here never affect the original EDF files or the data they contain, some of the filtering and editing options cannot be undone in the viewing session. So, in order to preserve a pre-filtered copy of the viewing session, you should use the File Save As command to save a backup copy before applying any filtering. First, you can find some simple filtering options under the Data Filters section of the Preferences tab of the inspector. From the Data Filters preferences, the top section can be used to apply a minimum cutoff for fixation durations, or it can allow you to merge fixations that are within a certain distance from one another and fall below a duration threshold, and you can change some settings related to these selection and merging processes. You can also set the viewing session to handle data around blinks in different ways, which can be useful for studies involving pupil size analysis. You can also choose whether your analysis will include static interest areas that fell outside of the current interest period. Often, it's a good idea to exclude those interest areas that were written to the EDF file before the interest period started or after the interest period ended, so as to exclude interest areas that aren't relevant to the current interest period. You can also change how the viewing session calculates the durations of eye events that span the boundaries of interest periods. Fixations can start before an interest period starts and end after it starts, or start before the interest period ends and end after it ends. These options affect not only the data that you see in the various views of Data Viewer, but importantly also affect the data that is written to any output reports that you create from your viewing session. You can read more about these options in the Data Viewer user manual, which you can access by clicking Help Contents under the section Preference Settings Data Filtering. For more advanced fixation filtering for some reading studies, you can use Data Viewer's 4-stage cleaning function. To do so, you can select a trial, group of trials, or the overall viewing session in the inspector. Then right-click and choose Perform 4-Stage Fixation Cleaning. This will bring up a dialog that allows you to use some filtering techniques that are sometimes used in eye-tracking studies on reading behavior. The 4 stages are applied sequentially to the data, and you can uncheck one or more of the stages to deactivate them. You can find a description of each of the stages by clicking the Fixation Cleaning Help button that is part of the dialog. It's also possible to adjust the position of fixation data using the spatial overlay view of the trial view window. To do so, it's easiest to first turn off the visibility of all aspects of the data besides fixations. This helps in the selection of the fixations. Then you can click and drag to select the fixations you want to adjust. Then, while holding the Alt key, you can use the arrow keys to move the fixations around. You can also press the Edit, Drift Correct, or press Ctrl D to align the selected fixations vertically without affecting their horizontal component. This can be useful when dealing with eye-tracking data from reading studies. Note, the center of each fixation circle corresponds to the actual XY position of the fixation, and larger diameters indicate longer fixation durations. So, in determining whether a fixation is inside a given interest area, Data Viewer checks the center of that circle against the interest area boundaries. In other words, if part of the fixation circle is outside an interest area, but its center is inside the interest area, then it will be counted as being inside the interest area. Though filtering and editing the eye movement data is not a typical part of most eye tracking studies, in certain situations the ability to do so in Data Viewer can come in handy.